Now it's time to put the plastic. We have, even though it's a subfloor done in plywood, we still do the same thing we do with all installations. Rule number one, always plastic, 250 micron SABS. After the plastic, we can lay our self-adhesive mat, and then we start laying the flooring. This particular installation we're doing on the plywood subfloor that from the crawl space that we did in the earlier session. This installation would also be on a concrete screed, cement screeds. It's exactly the same method. So plastic, whether it's plywood or whether it's cement or concrete, plastic goes on now. Okay, as you can see, we've overlapped the plastic by about 300 millimeters. Tape the joint. Guys, as you can see, the plastic we're using here is SABS. This is called SABS green and it's a 250 micron. There you go, 250. Right, this is the sticky elastic mat that we're going to do with a permanent bond. Just want to show you, this particular mat has some strands of reinforcement. This is to ensure that the adhesive does not delaminate from the mat. So please show using a top quality that will not delaminate and will be a permanent bond. Right, now we're going to roll out the sticky mat right through the floor and then we can start laying. So let's go and do that. Right, you can see at this point you're cutting the mat. It's a lot easier to cut the mat when upside down. Then we turn it over to make sure that the sticky side is facing up. Remember, the mat is installed 90 degrees to the floor and not in the same direction as the floor. Okay, what you just see now is Henry here doing the installation using what he calls a starting plastic. This is to save cutting off a piece of the elastic mat to create the flap. So he keeps all his old plastics from the other installations and uses it as a starter. So he actually saving himself some money here. Yeah, these are all different lengths.
Not too much, otherwise it'll take the paint off.
Right, as you can see, this is the start of the floor. It's being laid on the dummy flap. The minute you pull this flap back, it will then make contact with the sticky mat, and then it'll be stuck for life. So first 3 or 4 lines are going in while it's on the dummy flap, so they can position everything nicely, and then when it's all positioned, we'll pull this flap back. If you don't use a flap, you put it straight onto the mat, of course, you cannot position yourself. With strip flooring, you normally get staggered pieces. This helps to create an uneven stagger in your floor. And when you get to your joins, as you can see over here, you don't want any other piece to be too close. You want at least a 200 millimeter apart, so that will give you the strength. If you put it too close, you'll get a bit of weakness. So 200 millimeter apart at minimum, and fully staggered, no patterns to be created. If you're working with a set length floor and you have a set room, it's exactly one length. If your offcut is your starter and your offcut is your starter, you're starting to create a pattern. This needs to be discussed with the owner if you're going to create that pattern, because otherwise you may have a floor that's going to reject it. You need to create a staggered floor, and this you can achieve by playing with your starters and then creating that stagger. As you can see here, there's a small chip here. The installers have spotted this and they've marked it off, and this board's now going to come out. If they had spotted it only after they pulled this plastic back, then they would have had a major repair. So please inspect your boards during installation before you pull your plastic back. And this board is not a hull waste, because if you cut it off here, it can be used as a board at the end of the line. So you're only going to waste this a little bit. Right, as you can see, the installers have put four lines in. They're happy, everything's straight. And now we're going to start pulling back the plastic, so the floor will make contact with the sticky mat and then it's stuck. So let's start pulling.
Yeah, okay. And underneath.
Right. So the dummy flap is now being used, and now we're sitting on the original flap of the mat, and now installation can continue. Guys, generally with this elastic mat system, there is no glue in the tongue and groove. However, there may be a few reasons why one needs to put glue in the tongue and groove in certain places. And one of the reasons, as you're seeing here now, is the fitter in this doorway laid the passage first by the entrance door, and then started with a new mat going into the lounge area. So that means all the joins are in a line. So if you just lay without putting glue on that join, you'll find that you'll get a separation at that point and a big gap. So in this particular case, you need to put glue in the groove to stop that separation happening. Another reason where you may need to put glue is if you start laying in the center of the room in one direction and then continue later in the opposite direction. There's two ways of doing that, and one of them would be to start a new mat in one direction and a new mat in the opposite direction with a glue line in the middle to stop any separation. The other would be just to cut away the plastic and leave the mat on both sides, and then create dummy flaps on either side so you don't have to put the glue. Both ways would be acceptable. Another reason for not putting glue, guys, is of course if you need to change a board it's possible. If you put glue in every single line, then you cannot change a board. And of course, with a solid wooden floor, you know you cannot lay with glue in the tongue and groove at all. Right, what we're pulling out here now is another dummy flap because it's a new mat, a new join on a new line of the mat. So you need to make another dummy flap so you can get onto the flap of the original mat again. So you use the dummy flap again, and now we're getting back onto the original mat. Guys, if you have to do this and use a little bit of cold wood glue, white glue, please make sure you clean the floor with a damp cloth while the glue is still wet. If you try and do it when it's dry, you're going to damage the floor. So you have to do this while the glue is still wet. Right, and now we can carry on laying. Here's the rest of the room, all done. This is the lounge. What a difference it is compared to what it was. And now we're going to just put some skirtings in and then back with the furniture and the floor's finished. Just a little trick to fit skirtings can be a long, laborious job. These concrete nailers are quite cheap. I think they're about 1,000 Rand. Remember, we're in 2012, so if you see this video in 5 years' time, it might be a bit more. But anyway, about 1,000 Rand for a gun like this. It's a pneumatic concrete nailer. And yeah, it's just a matter of just shooting with pneumatics. The old days, they used to use a bullet with gunpowder to shoot these things, but now it's all pneumatic. So I'm going to give this to Henry, and Henry's going to just shoot it in. Right, guys, so all you'll do now is I'll just hit this little nail with a little countersink in, a little bit of wood filler, matching wood filler, and that's your skirting done. Right, guys, the floor is just about finished now. We'll take you for a walk around, you'll see the whole floor. But we're here standing in the entrance hall. You know, with focal points, it's very important to know where you're starting your floor from. So we decided to start the floor from off this wall here, because the front door is right here. So in other words, we start here, we're still straight. When a person walks into the house, the floor is still running straight. If we would have started from the far wall, by the time we got here, the floor may have been running a bit skew, and that would have been odd. So focal points are important, guys. Remember, you must know where and why you're starting your floor, from what wall and why you're starting from that wall. Right, now just to talk a little bit about strips. This is a wooden floor, it's an engineered floor, but it's real wood. You'll see down here at the bottom, you can see this gap here, not very pretty. So one would use a T-strip to cover that. There's the T-strip. Remember not to glue the strip to the floor, but to glue the strip with the T onto the bottom and some glue on the side, on the concrete side is fine. That will cover that. Rather use wooden strips for wooden floors. Don't try with aluminium, because with aluminium it's a bit of a mismatch. So try and match your wooden strips. If it's stair nosings, if it's T-strips or end caps, try and stick with wood. And and that's our sticky mat installation done.